From the studios of Staten Island Community Television, you're watching In the Bleachers, the TV show for the world's most passionate sports fans. Hello, everyone. I'm Papa Smurf, also known as Jaime Hixson.
Hi, everybody. My name's Eric Rosen, a.k.a. one of the ball boys for the U.S. Open.
Well, we're very happy that you could join us and our blue background, if you will, hence the Papa Smurf joke. We're very happy that you could join us in the meantime, and we will be taking phone calls at 718-727-0143. Kenny Graham is on the other side of the glass, and so is our mutual friend, David Marcus, who's waving to us right now and giving us the thumbs up. And as it turns out, he's going to be getting ready in less than an hour to work on Let the Good Times Roll, which is done by another mutual friend of ours, Vito Pacone, still doing his thing after 60 years.
Wow. All doo-wop music, right?
All doo-wop music. And nothing but the best, too.
I know, it's real. I was hearing them rehearse, and the music is very crisp. The voices are in such good synchronization. Like, everything is just perfect. So...
You know what's really perfect? The fact that one guy can still get a chance to do his craft in some form in a 6-decade span.
This is unbelievable.
And there are certain people that are just blessed with the life that they've had. He's definitely one guy who's been blessed with the life that he's had. Granted, he's had some trials and tribulations, but at the same time, music like this keeps people young. And it's also music like this that keeps the spirit of doo-wop alive.
Especially like Frankie Lyman, you think about doo-wop.
Frankie Lyman, the Platters, early stages of the Isley Brothers, who originally did the song Shout.
I think there's one or two of them still alive. Or with the Isley Brothers.
I know Ronald Isley is definitely still alive. He's had his share of issues as well, mostly tax evasion, but he is still doing his thing after almost 60 years.
In fact, they did a story on CBS Sunday Morning focusing on him, and recently going back on tour right now. Anyway, we got a lot of stuff in the world of sports cover.
You could say that again.
What a week. Really.
What a week and what a weekend. This past weekend, of course, was probably the fight that some were calling the fight of the century, even though we're just in the early part of the 21st century. But Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather Jr. was the talk of the entire fighting circuit.
Not just this past weekend. This has been talked about for the last few months, in fact. In the early stages, let's not forget, Floyd Mayweather was a guy who is one of the top pound-for-pound fighters in the world. He retired 2 years ago after his September 2015 fight against Andre Berto. That match was the end of his 6-fight deal that he had with Showtime pay-per-view, that he had to satisfy that contract. But nobody's going to really remember that fight. The fight that people unfortunately will remember most recently, before this past Saturday's match, was his May 2015 fight against Manny Pacquiao, a fight that took too many years in the making. And unfortunately, these were guys that were not in their prime. All the debate that took place for that was because of drug testing and the money and logistics. Because of the fact that Manny actually is signed under HBO pay-per-view, and Floyd at the time was with Showtime. So they had to work out so many of those logistics. And when they finally worked the logistics out and all the variables, when the fight finally happened, it was overhyped and it showed. For one, the same issues took place with that fight as well as this past Saturday's fight. The pay-per-view ordering issue. There were people who couldn't either get the pay-per-view when the fight took place or had delays in ordering the pay-per-view. And because that, in fact, it delayed the start of both matches. That's the one thing that they had in common. The difference was the fight we saw Saturday was an actual fight. We saw two guys literally pour their blood, sweat, and tears and fight each other, while in the Manny Pacquiao Floyd Mayweather match, it was a defensive dance, very few punches thrown in between. It was $100 at that time I would never see again. This time, the $100 that me and my father split for this fight, well worth it. It was just intense, and there were some good undercard matches that took place as well, which thank goodness that they always have some fillers. What was your take on this historic fight?
Well, unfortunately, I could not see the fight because, quite frankly, what person in their right mind would want to spend $100? Was it
$99.95.
$99.95
But really,
to watch the fight? Shoot, I'm better off probably going to the T-Mobile Arena and catching it over there. At least we don't have to put up with these ridiculous delays in pay-per-views. But that's beside the point.
It was
the
under
point
capacity.
is
The actual attendance was under the capacity of the arena, and a lot of people. If you watch because I watched the fight earlier at around 10 o'clock, which is crazy. That's considered earlier for our time zone because it's 7 o'clock in Nevada at that time. A lot of the seats were empty, of course. Not many people were there.
Yeah, probably because they were charging too much for attendance.
Well, it's not only that. It was the undercard matches. Everybody got there fashionably late, just like in L.A., for the actual fight. And LeBron James was there.
Yeah, that I can imagine.
A-Rod and J-Lo were actually at the fight. Les Moonves, I think, was at the fight. Probably Julia, Julie Chen from Big Brother, who, by the way, of course, they're married. And not only that, Les Moonves owns part of Showtime. And there was all these celebrities that were there, and people just watching the fight. And the first few rounds, when it finally took place, when they both got into the ring.
From what I understand, McGregor took 3 out of the first 4 rounds.
Yes, he definitely took the rounds. But that was, the crazy part is, as Floyd and his father said, that was part of their game plan, was to let McGregor tire himself out, get all of his punches out, and then start to take him after the 4th round, which he actually did. He fulfilled his game plan. He took a lot of the abuse early on, but then McGregor doesn't realize with boxing matches, it's not a sprint. It's a marathon. Because in the MMA world, especially Conor McGregor, he comes out of the gate fast, intense, looking to get the kill right in the first round, sometimes in the first minute. He likes to take care of business. While in boxing, that's not always the case. With these boxing matches, it takes time. And these are 12 rounds, and each round is like 3 minutes long. In MMA, it's 3 to 5 rounds, depending if it's a regular title match or a non-title match. The non-title matches are 3 rounds. The title match is 5 rounds. Each round is 5 minutes. The fact that he fought more than 25 minutes, you could tell by the 7th, 8th, and even 9th rounds that McGregor was tired.
Yeah.
He had nothing left, including in the 10th when it finally ended. For about over a minute, he was not throwing any punches whatsoever, and the referee just saw right then and there that the match just had to end.
Yeah.
He came in front of Floyd and prevented him from punching McGregor anymore, ended the fight. McGregor was pissed, actually, at the ref that he ended it.
Yeah.
He wanted to continue, but...
Well, how could he? I mean, after doing 10 rounds in a row, which is the longest that he's ever gone in any fight, how could he possibly have enough stamina to try and keep this going?
No, the referee just came in. That's the thing. It was like a minute. I think it was like over a minute and 30 seconds into the 10th round, or a minute 57 left in the 10th round, where, at that point, the referee just saw that nothing. Yeah, Robert Byrd, who is a legendary referee in his own right, a Hall of Famer too, and I love what the refs do in the ring. They said, "Folks, remember my instructions before we meet. Obey my commands at all times. Defend yourselves. Shake hands and let's."
I'll bet there wasn't even any shaking of hands, was there?
Actually, there were. Of course, they have their boxing gloves on. They pound the gloves and all that. There's no way they're gonna. With all the tape they have surrounding their boxing gloves, that they're gonna take it off, shake hands, and put it back on again. But if you look at the statistics, the punches thrown by Mayweather is 170 that he landed out of 320 overall. That's a 53% rate. McGregor, 111 out of 430, 26% rate.
Amazing.
And on top of all that, McGregor had some tendencies that he normally does in the MMA octagon that he was not allowed to do in the boxing ring of the squared circle. A lot of rabbit punches, a lot of punches to the back of the head. He even did one below the belt, which he was warned by the referee a bunch of times not to do that. He probably lost points because of those hits. At the same time, this is why, this was out of McGregor's comfort zone. And the gloves, too. Normally, the gloves that MMA fighters wear have holes in the fingers, as opposed to the big boxing gloves that he had to wear. And these were Queensberry rules that he had to abide by, too. So it was a different element. And the fact that he had no experience in the boxing ring, this was his boxing debut. But the fact he held his own for a good part of the match. For a part of the match. And
was the 3 knockdown rule in effect for this fight or not?
I don't think, it was even in effect. And on top of that, just the fact that McGregor, had a mission. His mission was, first, it began with, I'm going to knock him out in 1 round. Then he changed it to 4 rounds the night of the fight when he was interviewed. And his story is really, his story is really, I wouldn't say it's unique, but it's also, it was kind of sad to hear that he had to go through a lot of hardships.
Yeah.
He was on welfare, a few years ago back in Ireland, and he was down in the outs, but then he was able to pick himself up, get back to, to being a fighter in the mixed martial arts realm of UFC, dominate the sport, won 2 championships, even brought both belts to the ring on Saturday. It was just I had to give him a lot of credit for going in there and trying to go toe-to-toe with Mayweather. But Mayweather, he got the TKO. First time he ever did that since 2011 against Victor Ortiz.
Wow.
That he had a knockout decision.
We would be remiss if we did not discuss the aftermath of this fight. Conor seemed to have been a little bit humbled by the entire situation.
Oh, he was.
But what does this mean for him for his MMA career? Does this make him vulnerable in the eyes of fellow MMA fighters, or are they going to approach him the same way as if he were still an MMA guy?
Well, the thing was, again, he was at a disadvantage. He was in a completely different environment than what he was used to. In the octagon, a lot of the stuff that he did, he would have been able to at least do half those things, especially the hugging part. You see in MMA, they do that a lot.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of hugging going on, like a lot of aggressive maneuvering, trying to position themselves to get a takedown. You're not allowed to do that in the boxing ring.
Right.
A lot of the back punches, a lot of those things, you can't do that in the boxing ring. So he was he was in a completely different environment than what he was used to. So right there, he was at a complete disadvantage from Jump Street. But the fact he made an effort to try in this environment, I give him a lot of credit for. I do. Especially to go up against what some people say is a self-aggrandizing, arrogant human being, but also some people call a world-class athlete like Floyd Mayweather. I got to give McGregor credit for that. And he had it was a pro McGregor crowd. Every time when they mentioned Floyd's name, it was raining boos. But Floyd, he doesn't give a crap.
Yeah, Floyd was never one to worry about what people thought of him. The same thing with McGregor.
Yeah, that's the thing. McGregor is the type of, and you know what?
Not only that, but Mayweather has done some things that have not cast him in a very bright light. For example, the many domestic abuse cases that he's had, for one.
Which is definitely unfortunate that he committed, those incidents are around. There were other controversies, too, that were surrounding Mayweather. But, getting to this particular fight and all that, it was, Mayweather had a plan. He had a game plan to let McGregor to get his punches out in the open in the first 3-4 rounds, which he did. But then, 5th round, that's where Mayweather started to make some shots, especially in the 9th when he had him on the ropes. That he was making some really good left hook. He had some good right jabs, too, as well. And then the 10th round, where for that 1-minute period where McGregor wasn't defending himself, you knew that was pretty much it. You could see the fatigue and the redness on McGregor's body and in his eyes that he was done. He had no more juice left. He had no more energy to fight. And McGregor, he just wanted to get knocked out. He said, he said, you know what? Let it end with a knockout, not the way that it was. That's the one thing complaint that McGregor had. But as for him going forward with his MMA career, I think he will. He just is going to need some time, maybe a month or two, to just, recuperate from what he went through, in the ring with Mayweather.
Yeah.
But I think we will see him back in the octagon sometime soon because that's the environment that he's comfortable in. As for the money situation, going to this fight, Mayweather had $110 million guaranteed, while McGregor got a $30 million guaranteed contract. But that's just the base money that they get. That's not including the money from the revenue from the gate, as well as the pay-per-views, which mostly probably will go. A good portion of that will probably go to Mayweather, and I think some portion will go to McGregor. They're estimating that Mayweather could make over $200 million from this fight.
Wow.
And that McGregor can make $100 million. There is no MMA fighter on their best day that could make that type of money.
Yeah.
On their best day. And I don't care who it is, from the disgraced John Bones Jones to anybody. None of those fighters in MMA, they are woefully underpaid.
Yeah, well, as far as the money is concerned, obviously pay-per-view has a lot to do with it, and also the actual salaries that these fighters get alone just for being in the fight is another thing.
It all just depends on who you're fighting against. If it's like the next big fight that's coming up actually in September, you got Gennady Golovkin and Canelo Alvarez. That's another huge fight that's coming up on pay-per-view, HBO pay-per-view in September.
I am curious though, why is it that one fighter gets more than the other?
It's the fight, especially if you're going up against a top pound for pound fighter. It's the interest from it's the promoters too who are able to negotiate that price for this fighter. It's interest from fans. It's also there are other factors that come into play. For certain boxers will generate a certain amount of revenue, while other boxers, you're lucky if you get some are lucky to get $1 million or $5 million. It really depends on the boxer, the promoters, the venue where the boxing match takes place. If pay-per-view is covering it too, because if you are on pay-per-view, that's a huge payday. But if you're just on NBC or CBS or Spike TV, you're not really going to get that kind of payday.
Well, let me tell you, I really miss the days when these matches used to be on free television. In fact, I was watching on the web just the other day. There's this pair of brothers. They're called the Fine Brothers. You probably have heard of them. And they have not only their own website that consists strictly of react videos, they have their own YouTube channel as well. I check out the YouTube channel. And leading up to the fight, they had an episode where they had senior citizens react to this fight. And they admitted there was not this much hype since Ali Frazier. Because Ali Frazier, when they fought at the Garden 46 years ago, that was a real big deal. Because for one, Ali had just gotten out of prison for refusing to serve in the military, and Frazier was the heavyweight champion. And everyone kept on talking about what if these two went up against each other. And finally, after all this time and all the delay and all of the negotiations, they made the fight, and there were some real high rollers that attended this match.
Oh yeah, you probably had. I think Joe Louis probably came to one of those fights. You had
a whole bunch of celebrities wound up showing up at this fight.
Infamous mobsters too.
Yeah,
like Frank Lucas. Was that
the legendary Frank Lucas, who Denzel Washington made a movie about?
Exactly. He was friends with people in the boxing world too, and got friendly with knew Ali, and it was saying hello to Frazier too as well. But yeah, and Mia Farrow and Woody were at some of these fights when they were together. Believe me, big fights like that, when you have two headline guys, you're always going to generate a lot of publicity, celebrities that are going to make appearances to be ringside at that fight, the amount of money, that revenue that comes out of the fight. And it's not even just in the city of the fact that it took place in Las Vegas, all the hotels get filled.
Yeah.
Gambling, of course, revenues that take place, the betting. Yeah, there are a lot of factors that come into play So the Las Vegas Athletic Commission definitely made a good chunk of change, as well as the promoters, which is mostly Mayweather the money team, as he calls it.
There's one final thing to talk about in regards to the aftermath of this. For years now, MMA had become the dominant fighting sport over boxing, to the point where they pretty much made boxing an afterthought. Now that Mayweather won, what does this say about boxing and its future?
I think there is a good future coming up. Like I mentioned, in September, the Canelo Alvarez Gennady Triple G Golovkin match, that's going to be a huge fight coming in September for HBO pay-per-view. And when we have more fights, or Andre Ward, I think he's going to try and get a fight against Thurman. So there are going to be some other fights in the pipeline. The one fight I wish we could see, but will never ever happen, the Klitschko brothers, Vladimir and
Vitaly, because Vladimir actually retired recently.
I know. So both of them are retired. And not only that, the fact that they were brothers, they said they would never fight each other. That would have been a great fight to see.
Yep. One last thing in regards to MMA, though. You mentioned John Jones. Well, doesn't look like we're going to be seeing him doing anything in the ring anytime soon, because he wound up getting another drug suspension.
Yes, Dana White actually, it was crazy. At UFC 214, he recently had a fight against Daniel Cormier, in which he won the match by a submission. However, there was an in-competition sample collected the day before the fight on July 28th, and it tested positive for an anabolic steroid called Turinabol. Jones thinks it was a tainted nutritional supplement that could be behind his failed test. And if we're not mistaken, 14 pay-per-views ago at UFC 200, he was scheduled to fight Cormier, but then was tested for a failed substance in July 2016, an anti-estrogenic agent. And the U.S. anti-doping agency, the USADA, which of course is behind testing, they're helping WWE with its talent wellness policy. You know, that could be adjusted a bit. And they're helping with the Olympics.
Right.
Said that the failed test was the result of an unmarked sexual enhancement pill.
Viagra or maybe Cialis.
Exactly. And because of that pill that he took, he served a 1-year suspension, actually. And in 2015, before that, he had that hit and run incident too.
Yeah,
this guy
which resulted in someone tragically passing away.
I know. This guy has had disciplinary action after disciplinary action.
So because he tried to impress some girl, and because he couldn't stick around after an unfortunate soul passed away, and because he just had to have some of that juice, he wound up getting in trouble for this is his third strike if you count the hit and run incident.
And before this even took place, he was supposed to have a big fight coming up. They were going to make a super fight between him and the reigning heavyweight champion Stipe Miocic of Cleveland, Ohio, in December, before this failed drug test came out. And now, because of the fact this took place in Anaheim, the match with Daniel Cormier, this falls under the jurisdiction of the California State Athletic Commission. So right now, they're going to have to come up with they're going to have an investigation. Look into all the factors that took place, but right now UFC, they already suspended him. But because of that, they changed the contest from a submission to a no contest, and he was formally stripped of his light heavyweight championship. So now that's formally vacant.
Yeah.
So that
How long is this suspension for now?
I think it's probably going to be another year or so, which honestly he deserves a 2-year suspension.
If anything, he should be getting the 3 strikes and you're out thing if you count this hit and run accident that he was involved in. But they're not going to do that because they're only testing for drugs.
And on top of that, John Bones is one of the biggest names in UFC. Just like with Lesnar with WWE, even though Lesnar has been busted twice by the USADA, but WWE has done nothing in terms of actually enforcing their wellness policy on him because he's their cash cow, walking on 2 legs,
which is just smacking of hypocrisy right there.
Because you suspend Eva Marie and the other diva that I'm not, one who used to go out with Alberto Del Rio.
Yeah, and that's Paige.
Paige, yeah, they were both put under the wellness policy rule, but yet because of the fact that Lesnar is a part-time employee, and I hate doing those air quotes. I hate air quotes, but nonetheless, because he's a part-time employee, he's not subjected to the same rules and regulations as the rest of the locker room, which I complete utter BS if you ask me. But you know what? Let's get back into a little bit for this match. You know, the fact that Mayweather won his 50th. This was number 50. He surpassed Marciano, which some people say denigrates Marciano's name because of the fact that Mayweather fought against a competitor who had never been in a boxing ring ever. But you know, Mayweather said it best. You know what? A win is a win. No matter the way whatever way it may look to you, a win is a win. I don't care how it comes. And look at the 50 victories. His first victory came in 1996 against Roberto Apodaca by TKO.
That was 21 years ago, man.
Crazy. His first fight in 1996. I was 11 at that time when he had his first match.
I was a young adult then. I was 24.
And now against Conor McGregor, and all those fights, you look at the Jesse Chavez fights that he had, or the Miguel Cotto, who, by the way, actually fought that weekend in Anaheim against Yamaguchi, who he severely beat badly in the ring. Had Cotto been the one fighting Mayweather, Cotto would have taken Mayweather to task and won that fight. So he's lucky he didn't face Cotto. They faced McGregor. But, you know, that was all because McGregor repeatedly has called him out. And got in his face even at the weigh-in. Did you see the way he was screaming in his face? Well, anyway, folks, that fight took place, but we got some other news take place. Congratulations to Floyd Mayweather in his 50th victory. He is now formally done, retired. He'll run his gym and gentleman's club and other avenues of business for the rest of his life, while McGregor, I think, will be back in an MMA ring sometime, hopefully soon.
Speaking of the ring, they had SummerSlam recently.
At the Barclays Center, which, by the way, they extended it for another year. It's going to be at Barclays again. On the kickoff show, which I always hate relegating competitors to this portion of the show, that is a six-man tag match that was so lackluster. The Miz, Kurt Angle, and Bo Dallas, two of the three who basically need their push with the Miz. They defeated Jason Jordan, who's now the quote-unquote son of Kurt Angle, and the Hardy Boys via pinfall. This match was just piss poor, if you ask me. The Cruiserweight title match. Neville defeated Akira Tozawa to regain his Cruiserweight championship. And I heard Enzo Mori is now relegated to 205 Live with the Cruiserweights.
Interesting. In case you're wondering, 205 Live is where all of the competitors that are 205 pounds and under compete in.
That's right. Every Tuesday night after SmackDown airs on USA Network. Then kickoff. The final one, SmackDown Tag Titles, the Usos defeated the New Day. You must be thrilled.
Yeah, I'm really happy to hear that New Day finally got their comeuppance, and it was the Usos,
four-time tag team champions,
winning for the fourth time. You know, as everyone knows, they come from the very famous family of Samoan wrestlers,
Anoa'i family,
the Anoa'i family, and it was just a matter of time before these kids wound up getting their due diligence. Even if it is for the fourth time, I still get the feeling that they've pretty much been overshadowed, like the rest of the tag team division in that industry.
Actually, I don't see it that way. They've been really highlighted very well. At first, they were a heel team to begin with Tamina. But then when they started to apply all the makeup and the artistry, you know, and you know that pre-Samoan dance maneuvers that they do before they go into a fight, you know, the fans have taken to them. Now they're back to being heels, and they got this whole new attitude that's fun to watch. I love the Usos. No matter, they could be heels, they could be good, bad, and different. I don't care. I just think they're a really good tag team together, and hopefully they'll be a tag team till the end of time. Now, John Cena defeated Baron Corbin. You know, Baron Corbin was a former NFL player with the Washington Redskins. He beat Baron Corbin with the attitude adjustment. The SmackDown Women's title, Natalya actually defeated Naomi.
Yep.
Via submission with the sharpshooter. She's the new SmackDown Women's Champion, and I'm happy for Natalya. I really am. She comes another great lineage, the Hart family.
Yeah, she, of course, is Jim the Anvil Neidhart's daughter, and Natalya has had a very, very good career with the company.
Of course, and actually studied at the legendary Dungeon, the late Stu Hart's wrestling school, where if you're a Canadian, you want to learn wrestling, that's where you go.
And one thing that fans should know about the Dungeon, the casual fans anyway, when you go into the Dungeon, they will not let up on anybody, whether it's family or friends or strangers that are just trying to get into the biz. A lot of dues are paid in that Dungeon, much less in independent circuit or any other promotion that's going on.
Big Cass, of course, defeated the Big Show, but Big Cass unfortunately suffered a major injury last week. He's going to be out of action for quite some time. Randy Orton defeated Rusev via the pinfall. It was a very short match. The Raw Women's Championship, Sasha Banks won her 4th women's title, beating Alexa Bliss with the bank statement.
Right.
So they're going to have their rematch tonight in Nashville. Then Finn Balor, the Demon King, with the makeup, and he's really fun and electrifying to watch, defeated Bray Wyatt via pinfall. It was last year at SummerSlam where Finn Balor actually defeated Seth Rollins for the Universal title, but unfortunately separated his shoulder.
Yeah.
This time he came back to SummerSlam. Nothing like that happened, and he took care of Bray Wyatt with the coup de grace, one of his patented maneuvers. Speaking of Seth Rollins, guess who the new Raw Tag Team Champions? Him and Dean Ambrose.
Yeah, it's good to see a reunion of sorts of 2/3 of the Shield.
They defeated Sheamus and Cesaro, and by the way, Sheamus and Cesaro had nothing to be ashamed about. I think it was just master planning on WWE Creative's part to put the two of them together as a tag team. They really complement each other. If you watch a lot of their matches, you know, they're so in sync with each other. They anticipate each other's moves. I really like the two of them. I hope to see a rematch.
I actually saw Seth Rollins on ESPN just last week talking about the Mayweather fight and offering his opinion about it.
Yep. And AJ Styles defeated Kevin Owens to retain his championship.
Right.
The U.S. title. The WWE title, Jinder Mahal. Of course, the Punjab, who speaks Punjabi very well, who has that attitude and ruthless aggression.
Yeah.
Defeated Shinsuke Nakamura with the kalash, as he calls it. It's sort of like a backwards rock bottom, if you will.
Well, I'm not sure if any of the fans know this, but Jinder Mahal is another guy who comes from a very famous wrestling family because his uncle is Gama Singh, who was a legendary wrestler in the international circuit. And here's something that you may not know about Jinder and his uncle. Of course, Jinder's character has him billed, I should say, from India. He was actually born in Calgary. He's actually Canadian Indian.
And there's a huge Indian population in Canada, especially if you watch the Hockey Network that's there. They have Punjabi announcers. Yeah, they become a huge population, especially in Western Canada.
And for the record, Gama Singh actually had a brief trial run with WWE, and he also wrestled at Madison Square Garden quite a few times. But he wrestled mostly in India, all across Europe, and all across Asia, in addition to wrestling in Canada.
And the final match of the night, the Fatal 4-Way for the Universal Championship. Lesnar, Roman Reigns, Braun Strowman, Samoa Joe. This was like an epic.
4 heavyweights that you would definitely not want to mess with, and 4 heavyweights that you would definitely pay to see in a Fatal 4-Way match.
I wish they could have just made this it actually was sort of a street fight. Braun Strowman took Brock Lesnar to task.
Yeah.
He put him through 2 tables, and he threw a table on top of him.
Wow.
To the point where Lesnar was taken out on a stretcher, which, for any person who's watched Brock Lesnar, there's never, ever been a time where he's been taken out on a stretcher. This was the first time that's ever taken place in a match. And yet, of course, he comes back, and he gets his championship with the F5 on Roman Reigns, which is his maneuver. It's sort of like a fisherman's carry, and then he sort of lifts the legs
Yep.
over the left shoulder to the right, and basically knocks you down face first, and he gets the pin move. Sometimes he also likes to do the arm, sort of like a.
It's a version of the arm bar.
But he tries to separate your shoulder
Yep.
socket. Anyway, he won, and now coming up in No Mercy, Braun Strowman and Brock Lesnar are going to be fighting for the Universal title. And just announced today, John Cena and Roman Reigns are going to be going one-on-one against each other. And if you're a WWE Network subscriber, the Mae Young Classic tournament just got underway.
Yeah. Mae Young Classic, of course, named after one of the original divas of WWE, her along with the fabulous Moolah.
And what they do is they went all over the world searching for 32 women to complete this field from all different walks of life, different countries, cultures, languages, creeds. And I just am so happy they have women from Germany. They had a lucha libre from Mexico.
Yeah, that's great.
It's a great variety, and people who actually were in the company in the past or been on the independent circuit for over 10. Some people that have been wrestlers since they were 16.
Yeah.
So it's really amazing that these women are given a chance, because look at the revolution that we've seen in WWE the past few years. WWE has done a great job in in lifting the women up through through the company. And you see with Sasha Banks and Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair. By the way, we haven't heard any news yet on Ric Flair. Hopefully things improve.
Yeah.
Now let's get into some football, because college football.
Well, they say that the season is going to start this coming Saturday, but the season really started this past Saturday. There were a few games that took place, one of which took place in Australia between Stanford and Rice.
It wasn't even a game. It was a demolition derby, because Stanford kicked the ever-living snot out of Rice 62-7, and it was one man, Bryce Love, and he didn't provide any love for Bryce, that's for sure. 13 carries. He had a 62-yard burst through the middle line of Stanford's opening play from scrimmage.
So much for missing Christian McCaffrey, huh?
Oh, yes. And look at the amount of yards he had, 180 yards rushing. He was done by, I think, the middle of the third quarter.
Yeah. Of course, it's Rice University that they're facing. The competition is going to be much more fierce when Pac-12 season begins. At the same time, Stanford, do not count them out from the race for the Pac-12 title. This is a good, well-coached team, and after the season that they had last year, look for them to continue using the running game with this new kid that they have.
Well, he was the backup last year for Christian McCaffrey, who averaged, I believe, 7 yards, but now he's getting more. Now that McCaffrey's with the Panthers in the NFL, he's going to be the focal point of the offense. Speaking of a new season, the Charlie Strong era got started with South Florida. It's amazing, after he was unceremoniously let go by the University of Texas for Todd Herremans, and part of it wasn't his fault. Really, I think he was given a raw deal at times in Austin. But now in South Florida, in Tampa, he's got this kid, Quentin Flowers, who keep him in your thoughts for the Heisman Trophy this coming in December, along with Bryce Love, too, by the way.
Yeah.
But Quentin Flowers, 2 touchdown passes that he threw. Dearness Johnson had 2 TD runs, and all in the second quarter. They ended up beating the San Jose State Spartans of the Mountain West Conference 42-22.
Yeah.
It looks like South Florida, ranked 19th, ready to start the year off. They're going to probably end up winning the American Athletic Conference.
Yeah, and that's going to be a really tough division to win, because you also have to consider Temple, you have to consider Navy. Cincinnati could be on the up and up once they get themselves a really good recruiting class. Do not count any of those teams out.
And here's the rest of the schedule. Thursday, of course, we got Oklahoma State against Tulsa. The Buckeyes are playing the Hoosiers.
Yeah,
Friday,
that's the Big 12 opener between those two schools. Indiana is a team that's going to be one to watch in the next 2 years. They got probably one of the best running back prospects for next season. So watch out for Indiana. I think they're going to make a lot of noise. But as far as Ohio State is concerned, what more can Urban Meyer do with that school that he has not already done at places like Utah and Florida, where he
win another championship?
Yeah, he's already won 2 national titles. one with Florida and one with Ohio State. What's next?
Another national title. That's the whole thing. These teams want to get into the college football playoff, but yeah, that's what you have to do. You have to get into the CFP to get in the semifinals. Anyway, Friday, in our neck of the woods in Piscataway, the Knights are going to be hosting the Huskies.
Yeah, Rutgers went through a really stormy time in their second year in the Big Ten last year. Now they're going to go up against a school that was in the playoffs last year in Washington. Rutgers was a total disappointment last year. They did nothing defensively. They couldn't solve the quarterback problem at all. Now they have a graduate transfer from Louisville who's going to be their starter. Let's see what happens with this newcomer that's going to be taking the snaps from center.
And you got the Badgers, Wisconsin hosting the Aggies to end Friday. Then on Saturday, there's a whole slate. You got the defending national champion Tigers of Clemson University, which, by the way, Dabo Swinney got one of the richest contracts, a 5-year, $65 or $68 million contract extension, which would pay him an annual salary of $6.7, putting him in the top 5 echelon of college football coaches like Nick Saban. And then you got the Akron Zips going to Happy Valley to take on the Nittany Lions at 12 p.m.
That's a Channel 7 game if anybody wants to watch it. And
you got
Clemson, for the record, has Kent State.
The Golden Flash. Then you got the Terrapins of the Big Ten, actually, the Big Ten going up against the Texas Longhorns.
That's going to be a really tough test for Texas' new coach. Maryland is no one to be messed around with.
And the historically black college university Bethune-Cookman, the Wildcats, will be taking on the Miami Hurricanes.
Yeah,
12:30.
Yeah, that's probably because Miami couldn't get anyone else on their non-conference schedule. But then you've got the big games. Your Florida Gators playing Michigan.
But here's the problem. Florida suspended 7 of their players, including Antonio Callaway. So this is going to be tougher than it was already tough to begin with. Now you add the fact that you have 7 players suspended. This is taking place in Arlington. They're going to get killed in this game now. You got the UTEP Miners against the Oklahoma Sooners. This is the last year for their quarterback, who's Baker Mayfield, who could be a Heisman Trophy candidate. And this is going to be the first year that Bob Stoops won't be on the sideline.
Yeah, Bob Stoops retired recently.
South Florida has yet another game, the second game in the Charlie Strong area. They got the Stony Brook Seawolves from, of course, in our neck of the woods. Western Michigan Broncos, who graduated, Corey Davis, who's now with the Tennessee Titans.
And also who lost a really good head coach to the University of Minnesota.
Yeah, they're going to be playing the USC Trojans. Good luck. Appalachian State against Georgia. You got Central Arkansas against Kansas State. Georgia Southern against Auburn. You got Louisville, with their player, their reigning Heisman Trophy player, Lamar Jackson.
And the second best game of the day, Florida State and Alabama in Atlanta.
That's an ABC game.
Yeah, the first game that's going to be played, the first football game that's going to be played at the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Actually, Mercedes-Benz was already christened this
Well,
past
the first college football game that's going to be played at Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
That will allow people to get Chick-fil-A. Yeah, Chick-fil-A actually opened the stand. Here's the problem, though. A lot of the games for the Falcons are on Sunday, and as you know, Chick-fil-A, they don't open on Sundays. So you're going to be SOL'd if you want Chick-fil-A on Sunday at those games. But nonetheless, they will be selling at this game. And the fact that you got Florida State with Deontay Francois, that he's going to be a Heisman candidate for sure. And then you got the Alabama Crimson Tide right there, a team that's I consider always the NFL factory.
Yeah.
Then you got the BYU Cougars and the LSU Tigers at 9:30. Of course, LSU has a new head coach and Ed Ogeron. And then you got Montana State and Washington State right there. And then Sunday, West Virginia and Virginia Tech.
Yep.
And Tennessee ends the week on Monday on on Labor Day.
We'd be remiss if we did not mention one other thing in college football, and this is something that's garnered a lot of controversy and criticism, and that's Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin has his 3rd head coaching job in his career, and he's still a young guy, too. He's going to be coaching Florida Atlantic University this year. He has drawn a lot of transfers into the program. But some are wondering, is this guy going to be able to make it as a head coach in this program? Because he failed miserably at USC. I mean, He lasted 20 games. Yet not only did he get himself a new job, he also wound up getting an offensive coordinator that also has been the subject of a lot of NCAA violations. So let's see what this guy can do in a small-time program, if you will.
That's for sure. And let's see. Wish him the best of luck. Now going from college football to the National Football League, we're in, of course, the third week of preseason games concluded. Last night on NBC, you had the 49ers Vikings. Of course, the Vikings will be hosting this coming Super Bowl 52, in that incredibly new space-proof glass stadium.
Yep.
U.S. Bank Stadium. And, of course, the Vikings actually won 32-31. Even though Brian Hoyer had a good performance, he'll probably be the number one. Found Marquise Goodwin for a 46-yard strike, but at the end of the day, the Minnesota Vikings actually end up rallying for that victory.
That was also the same score of the Giants and Jets game.
But I'll get into that in a bit. Bengals, of course, beat the Redskins 23-17. Andy Dalton 8 of 13 for 70 yards. And Vontaze Burfict had a nice intercepted pass and returned it for a touchdown.
This is a statement year for the Bengals. They were a brutal disappointment last year. And Andy Dalton, quite frankly, has got to step up his game now. And also
could be facing a 5-game suspension for another illegal hit. How about this? The Bears, Mike Glennon turned in a pretty good performance for the Bears. That's a bit of a quarterback controversy right there. But at the end of the day, he had a 96-yard drive with a 1-yard pass to Deion Sims. They won 19-7. Unfortunately, Cameron Meredith tore his ACL.
And he's gone for the year.
The Dolphins, of course, lost to the Eagles 38-31. Carson Wentz threw touchdown passes to both Torrey Smith on a 50-yard play on the right side on a 3rd and 8, and a 15-yard TD over the middle on 4th down to Alshon Jeffrey.
I'm telling you, do not sleep on Carson Wentz. This kid is the real deal. Did he have his growing pains as a rookie? Yes. But he has so much room to grow, especially now that he's got Alshon Jeffrey to work with in the slot.
How about a 9-yard slam pass by Cameron Newton to Kelvin Benjamin, and the Panthers beat the Jacksonville Jaguars 24-23. The Jaguars officially announced Blake Bortles to be the starting quarterback, and we're hearing possible Colin Kaepernick rumors, but we'll get into that in a bit. The Patriots did defeat the Lions 30-28, but unfortunately it came at a price, and the price was Julian Edelman tearing his ACL.
So now he's gone for the season, and that means if Rob Gronkowski cannot keep his good health in order, who becomes the number one receiver?
You got Brandon Cooks, who they traded for. They got Dwayne Allen at tight end. They always have an array of running backs and receivers. That's the thing about the Patriots. Just because one player gets hurt doesn't mean they won't have somebody come up in their place. That's why they've been the offensive juggernaut that they've been for the past 15 years or so. With both, when you have Tom Brady at 40 now, and you got Bill Belichick at coach, what can really go wrong?
Very little, aside from injuries.
How about the Denver Broncos and the Green Bay Packers? In that game, the Broncos actually won 20-17. Jamal Charles made his debut for the Broncos, and it was a pretty good debut. And Von Miller got a nice sack of Aaron Rodgers for an 11-yard loss.
And as expected, Trevor Siemian is going to be the starting quarterback for the Broncos after all.
Which, you know what? That's the best problem any team could have with him and Paxton Lynch. Now, as for the Raiders-Cowboys, we all know Ezekiel Elliott made his debut, but we don't know how long his suspension will be. Tomorrow, he goes to the NFL to appeal that 6-game suspension. If it's upheld, he will not play until the end of October. And, of course, the Raiders won that game. Yeah, Cowboys actually won 24-20. Cooper Rush, rookie running, got 2 passes. Texans lost to the Saints 13-0, and we don't know who will be the quarterback for the Texans. Will it be Deshaun Watson, Tom Savage? We'll find out after this coming week.
I'm telling you, they need to make Deshaun Watson the starter. And speaking of Houston, their preseason finale against the Cowboys has been moved to AT&T Stadium after Houston got hammered by Hurricane Harvey.
Oh, yes, and I'm so sorry I didn't even think about this. Our thoughts and prayers are with the good people in the South southeastern Texas area, especially Galveston, Houston, and all in the Gulfport cities. Our hearts, our prayers, our thoughts with all of you. And I'm really sorry that I didn't even bring that up. I feel really bad.
I understand.
I
understand.
Anyway, getting to the rest of the games. You had the Battle of LA, the Chargers and the Rams, and the Chargers beat the Rams 21-19. Bossa had a huge strip sack off of Jared Goff, which led to a Melvin Ingram 76-yard touchdown, 21-19.
Are the Rams sure that Jared Goff is going to work out for them as a starting quarterback?
I think he is. He has the weapons that he needs this coming year, especially with Sammy Watkins. And you got a good array of players. And you got a hell of an offensive line too to protect you. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you have a new head coach in Sean McVay, he's under some good tutelage for sure. I think he'll have a banner season. The Browns officially announced DeShone Kizer, and thank goodness, as the starting quarterback. And
that's the first smart move that the Browns have made in maybe 10 years.
And they won 13-9. Yes, the stat line wasn't perfect, but he made some decent throws, and he was the better quarterback than Brock, the intercepted Osweiler, or Cody Kessler, who is a glorified third stringer on any team. Speaking of quarterback situations, who knows what's going to happen? It's either going to be Scott Tolzien or Stephen Morris for Week 1, because it doesn't look like Andrew Luck is going to be the Week 1 starter for the Colts after all.
Yeah, this is going from bad to worse for the Colts. It just doesn't seem like Andrew can keep his good health in order.
Well, he had off-season shoulder surgery back in January, and he still hasn't even played a single snap. And they did lose, I believe, 19-15 to the Steelers, who, by the way, the backup for Le'Veon Bell, that's an interesting battle. You got Niall Davis, and you got a rookie right there. The Cardinals and the Falcons played each other, and Arizona had a 24-14 win. John Brown made a huge, speedy 20-yard scoring pass from Carson Palmer. And he got a 21-yard pass from Drew Stanton. So the Cardinals are going to be looking good. As for the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens, Tyrod Taylor had a concussion. If he is not able to pass the NFL protocol, it could be either Nathan Peterman or T.J. Yates at the helm.
Sorry, but T.J. Yates, Nathan Peterman, make this 18 years in a row without a playoff game for the Buffalo Bills. That is the first guarantee I can make for you right here and now.
And the Ravens just gave a one-year contract extension to John Harbaugh, deservingly so. But Flacco is yet to play a single down in the preseason. So right now, Ryan Mallett looks like the number one at the moment. But with that offense, I honestly think he'll be able to steer them for whatever time that he has to be under center. And then the Kansas City Chiefs and the Seattle Seahawks played each other. And Spencer Ware, unfortunately, sprained his right knee and was carted off the field. Yeah. Another injury took place in Seattle. Seattle is a team that lost their left tackle, George Fant, for a torn ACL. And they're already, hurting in the offensive line for sure. Yeah. But nonetheless, the game ended with a 26-13 decision.
Finally, we can talk about that. This past Saturday's Jets and Giants game.
A game I was at.
The score was 32-31, but quite frankly, it was a hell of a lot worse than that. The Giants had a 19-point lead.
A 29-3 lead.
They had a 26-point lead one time and were this close to blowing it. Why, you may ask? Because the Giants had not one, but two pick-six plays. And also, their kicking game was solid. And also, a running touchdown for the Giants, which included a 2-point conversion. At the same time, we appreciate how the defense has been really solid for the Giants in this preseason, but you've got to do better than one touchdown and 3 field goals offensively. I can't say this enough.
By JPP he had early in the game.
It's obvious Jason Pierre-Paul has not missed a beat since he came back from his unfortunate accident on Independence Day a couple years ago.
One of the dumbest things that took place in this game was when Christian Hackenberg had the ball. He was staring his receiver to the right sideline so intently, which if you're taking football quarterback 101, never, ever stare a receiver down, because you give the secondary an idea where you're throwing the ball to, and they can anticipate the throw and make an interception. And Landon Collins did exactly that for 21 yards on the left side of the field and got an easy toe-tapping touchdown like he was Michigan J. Frog from the WB. I'm surprised he said, hello, my baby. Hello, my darling.
Well, lost in this whole thing for the Jets was the rise of our Darius Stewart as a receiver. He caught 2 touchdowns.
Big ones by Bryce Petty.
2 big touchdowns. And also, before he got hurt, Bryce Petty was playing good football.
One of his own players ends up getting into his leg, and now we don't know whether or not how long it's going to be. So at the moment, and we just found out today that Josh McCown, who only played 1 series in the game against Tennessee, was named the starting quarterback for the Jets going to week 1 in Buffalo.
I don't know how that constitutes him earning the job, but in my eyes, he got that by default, because if Bryce Petty had not gotten hurt, it would have been a totally different story. I don't even think that Todd Bowles would have decided who his starting quarterback would have been.
Well, here's the thing. In that 1 series he did play, he was 3 of 4 and got that touchdown to McKeon or whoever his name was. But other than that, though, Hackenberg was a hack.
For lack of a better word.
He really hacked it. He choked enormously. There were moments where he didn't anticipate any of the pass rushers coming to him and knocking him down on his keister.
Mm-hmm.
That's also his fault and lack of pass protection there on the left side of the line, which is another issue I have. The running back situation is, with the exception of Bilal Powell and Matt Forte, the rest of the unit is blase.
After Bilal Powell and Matt Forte, the running back depth chart stinks.
Yeah.
And there's another problem, because Leonard Williams wound up getting hurt in the game. We don't know what his status is.
Which really hurts that defensive line, because he's one of the key members of that front 7.
I think he might be their best defensive player right now.
He was last year their best defensive player. Now, Sheldon Richardson, Muhammad Wilson are going to have banner seasons.
Mm-hmm.
They have a good pair of safeties, especially with Jamal Adams coming up this year. I like his prospects for this year and beyond. I think he's going to be a good future safety for the team. My problem is the quarterback situation. Now that McCown's going to be the starter against a Buffalo defense that, honestly, Marcel Darius is supposed to be their best defensive player. They don't have a cornerback situation since Stephon Gilmore left. I think McCown might have a coming out party, just for the fact
that's asking a lot.
Just for the fact that you're going up against a Bills defense that is ill prepared this year, if you ask me. Yes, they have they have Shaq Lawson, but he's playing, actually his first year. So I think McCown might have a good game, possibly, but I'll doubt it.
Well,
possibly.
Let me put it this way: the Jets have the Eagles, and the Giants have the Patriots in their preseason finales. If they don't clean things up by the season opener, all bets are off.
And Odell Beckham likely is not going to be available for the opener against Dallas, because what happened in week 2 when they were week 2 in the game against
when he got basically hit on the knee
by the Cleveland Browns, his left leg by cornerback Brian Body Calhoun. X-ray at the time showed it to be negative. Then they confirmed it was a sore ankle sprain. So he looks like he's going to be missing week 1, which, of course, he is pivotal to that offense. Besides Marshall, who, thank God, was able to return to camp because he had that shoulder injury in that game. Neither one played this past Saturday, and neither one are playing this coming Thursday when they go to New England.
With just over a minute left, quickly, in baseball, the Yankees not only took 2 out of 3 from the Tigers, they also took 2 out of 3 from the Mariners.
And it took a fight as well on the.
And there was an ugly brawl that took place in that last Detroit game, where Miguel Cabrera got suspended 7 games. Austin Romine got suspended 4 games among the numerous suspensions that took place.
Both managers being ejected.
And both managers getting thrown out. Now the Yankees have a big week ahead of them. The Indians for 3 games and the Red Sox for 4 games.
Huge.
They have got to win at least 5 out of 7 to close the gap on the Sox and make things closer in the AL East.
And tonight, Kluber versus Severino. What a marquee matchup if anybody's there.
That's one other thing. Cavaliers and Celtics made a big trade for Kyrie Irving. Now it's suddenly up in the air because there's still the issue of Isaiah Thomas's health.
Yeah.
So we don't know if that trade's going to be complete or not. So that's officially doing it for us. For everyone here, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Eric.
Good night, everyone.